Hey, this is Lea Marlene, and you're listening to the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people out there. Thank you for listening to the Matt Balaker podcast. Please do me a favor and click like and subscribe. It helps the algorithm and makes me feel wonderful. Today's guest is an old friend, a former comedian, an actor, a cancer survivor, an artistic director, and founder of the Lea Marlene Actors Studio at the Namastage Theatre. Please welcome Lea Marlene to the program. How are you doing, Leah?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's so fun.
Well, I'm glad to have you because I know you from stand-up, and I knew you were an actor as well. But until we started playing this podcast, there was so much I didn't know about you. So can we get started? Like, where was it that you grew up, Leah?
I grew up in Denver, Colorado.
Denver, Colorado. And what was kind of your first inclination that you were a creative type?
I was constantly putting on little shows. It was very annoying, like inviting neighborhood kids that were my age, come here, I'll teach. Already trying to set up an acting studio. I'll teach you how to do it. They're like, you don't know how to do it. I'm like, that's fine. It's a club. Let's all do it. So I was always trying to have a comedy club in my basement or some kind of I'll teach your kids to read. I would pass out pamphlets at 6 years old.
You're like the groundlings before, in Denver. Did you have to deposit $500? Like, how old were you when you started, doing this stuff?
Yeah, I was running bringer shows in my garage. 6 years old.
Just bring 27 of your friends on a Wednesday. They'll pay $30 a ticket.
I'm like, you have family? Come on, what are you doing? I always loved being silly and laughing and who doesn't love that stuff? But I just always wanted to make a thing about it because I really, from a really young age, knew that energy was magical. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, why wouldn't you want to be with that all the time? So I was constantly trying to perform, or if there was a talent competition, I was the one that's like, we have to have rehearsals. This is a big
we got to take it seriously, third graders.
Yeah, it's so funny too. I was just talking to my brother. I have footage of I think it was my third grade talent show or something. But what's so funny is I was a minority at my school. I was our school was mostly Mexican kids and Black kids. And then whites were the minority actually. And so here we were doing our little corny, talent show thing that we did. And then these Latina chicks got up there and did Pump It. They were like, push it real good. And it was top notch, amazing, but at the level of not third grade. So everyone is just jaw dropped. It was hysterical, but I just always loved that kind of that kind of stuff. So I was always involving myself, and then we had one of those big talent searches. This hideous talent show things that come to town, and it's a big cattle call, and it was 500 kids or something, and I won. And so
wait, sorry. So was this a Star Search type thing, or what was
yes. Yeah, okay. It was a kind of a Star Search. Remember when lip syncing was big? Mm-hmm. So it was, and this is so inappropriate. Now that I look back, I don't know what my mom was thinking. My mom's a good person. She's a very good person.
It's not your fault, Mom. Please go ahead, Leah.
I lip synced Peggy Lee's Big Spender, which that is not appropriate for, I was 6, 7 years old. And I wore my mom's silk pajama top, and we made it a dress. And I won in my baggy spandex because I was so skinny that my spandex were baggy.
Baggy spandex, okay.
Yeah. And I won. I won the lip syncing. So it was like on in between the cartoons, and it was a very big deal. You know, it was like all the news at my school. And so that
would
was,
be my biggest credit. So I mean, don't downplay that. So
it is.
yeah, what was life like, after you got this distinction, Leah?
Yeah, it's all been downhill since then. Actually, that was when I peaked, and then since then, yeah. So I've always loved it. I don't know what the question was. I've lost track in the land of Peggy.
Well, I mean, you're thinking about your third grade days singing or lip singing "Hey Big Spender," but I was curious, like after you won that, what changed for you?
Oh, well, I was famous. No.
Oh, of course.
Clearly, I was famous then, Matt. No, I just kept doing stuff and failing and loving it and winning things and booking stuff and not booking stuff, but I just kept doing it, like forever. And so then it just was a slow, progression throughout all of, I was that drama dork. Like I did all the things. I was like every chorus member and tree and all the things. And then sometimes throughout college, I started booking actual stuff. Like I started actually getting leads and things, but I still had no like craft. I still didn't know what I was doing, even though I'd been doing it a long time. It wasn't until I moved to LA that I really got a sense of like humbleness and like, oh, I don't know anything about anything at all.
No, that's a rude awakening. I mean, we met in Los Angeles. Like, where were you just before you moved to LA, Leah?
I was still in Colorado, so I graduated. I went to Colorado State University for college, and I was actually going to move to LA because I was going to go to Loyola Marymount for film school, and I chickened out. So last minute, I stayed in state, and I kind of developed my own film degree. I did journalism, broadcast news and television, and theater.
Wow!
And my journalism professors were very cool because they would let me shoot movies and stuff instead of news projects. And they let me do commercials and stuff like that instead. And then, of course, theater. And so that was kind of my thing. And then I moved out to LA and right after college. In the year 2000, I'm going to age myself. In the year 00.
Well, you graduated at 7 years old, which is very impressive. So you're in Colorado. What were your first impressions of Los Angeles? Obviously, it's a little different, but what was the reality like?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, this is what's so funny is, this was in the cave days. Like we didn't even barely have cell phones. Remember? I don't know. Yeah. The Thomas guide, of course, like we had the giant Thomas guide and we'd have to be like, it was so hard to do anything, like literally anything. To go to the store took all day. And that was mind blowing to me. Like Denver, I'm in Denver now, and it's a much bigger city than it was when I, grew up here. It was a totally different place. Mm-hmm. LA was just, everything was a competition, everything. A parking spot, this, that, and everything was like you had to jump through hoops and like everything is just hard.
Yeah, it's stressful. Like you said, finding a parking spot is like a 28-minute ordeal, if not more at some places. And so I grew up in San Diego, which, it's not terribly far from LA, but I still had this vision that LA is glamorous. And then I moved there around the same time you did. And it was from, I mean, maybe pockets of like the Palisades or Beverly Hills, like had some of that. What were your first impressions just on the aesthetics of the city?
I mean, so when I first moved, it's so funny because a friend of mine had moved from college out there as well. And she wasn't like a super close friend. She was, but a nice girl who I knew. And so she was looking at places for me since I wasn't out there. I'm like, would you go look at this place? And I signed a lease on a place that I had never seen in person. Like my friend went and saw it for me. Like a friend who wasn't even super close, you know? I'm like, sure, that's
It's fine. It's a casual acquaintance. I'm sure it'll work out well.
no, I'll live there a year. Yeah, you can totally make that decision for me. She was actually really great for doing that. And she was a really cool person. But anyway, and still is, I'm sure, I hope. Anyhow, I have lost touch with her. But so it looked cool from the pictures and all this. And the guy was like very nervous to like rent it to me, you know, because he's like, you don't know how hard it is out here. He was a one of those truck drivers for movies. What are they called?
Truck drivers for movies. I think that's the official
You know
title. I don't know.
like it's a career truck driver for movie. That name, I forget what it is, but
it's not roadie, but I know what you're talking like.
You know what I mean? It's a special, industry name.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Best Boy or something, or the I don't know. Well, someone in the comments will correct me, but
somebody will tell us. So anyway, I saw this guest house. It was very cute in the pictures. He was very nice. The whole thing seemed charming. So I move in. The place was really cool. Like it was a great guest house, orange trees and stuff. I mean, like magical place, but North Hollywood. Okay. So I was not prepared for like helicopters. The night I moved in, helicopters were shining their light in my guest house. My whole place is lit up. I'm like, what is going on? Because they were looking for a murder that happened across the street that night. So that's was
why
like
the guest house was open. So
yeah. And then that's when I stopped watching the news because I remember turning on the news and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, looking for a murderer. I'm like, oh, that's what's going on. Oh, right. Like right here. That's what's happening. And that was like every night. So I stopped watching the news.
Yeah, murders become commonplace. So you got to just focus on what you can. So, I knew you initially through stand up. When did you get into, slinging jokes?
Stand up. Okay, so North Hollywood, I had applied, and this was the rude awakening of LA too. Coming out with my journalism degree, and I was like, I can do this, and I thought I would get hired as a page at NBC. I really was like dead set because you have to have a journalism degree to get like at the time a $6 an hour job or something, So I was like, I'm definitely getting this, right?
I'm a shoo-in.
Peacock feathers, and I think instead they just thought I was crazy. They're like, oh, she's insane. So I didn't get hired. I applied at 60 more jobs, could not get hired anywhere, like even just anything. So then I started trying to apply as a waitress any place. And I got hired at the Ha Ha Cafe.
In beautiful North Hollywood. Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I don't know.
For people who are unfamiliar with the Ha Ha, how would you describe it? I guess during that time.
I don't know. We might have to sign an NDA. I don't know if we can put this.
Fair enough. Yeah.
It was literally a movie because here I am applying everywhere, not getting a job, like starting to get a little desperate, It's like I moved out there with like $2,000, like nothing, And so I go to the Ha Ha and I meet Jack Asadorian, the famous Armenian club owner, if you guys don't know him. And he's like, come tonight. It was Whacked Out Wednesdays with Kim Whitley. And he's like, come tonight and watch the show and just see how you like it and see if it's a good fit for you to work here because it gets very busy and I want to make sure, I'm like, sure. So he's like, I'll give you a free ticket to the show. Come enjoy, have the food, whatever. I come. I sit down. It's packed. He's like, you want to start tonight? I said, well, I guess. He throws me a T-shirt and he says, put this on in an apron. And I'm working. I have no training. I don't know anything about this place. Zero. Nothing.
Thrown into the fire. So did you have any hospitality or waitressing experience before this?
Nope.
You had a journalism degree.
Yeah, no, I had been a hostess. I had been a hostess at some restaurants, but and some catering experience. But nothing was going to prepare me for this. I mean, this was it was insane. it was not a good night. I had a lot of high tickets walk out on their bills. Big names too that I should probably, I don't know that I want to say, I'm not sure, but like some big name people were very disrespectful and very, very rude. Kim Whitley and all them were super nice. Kim Whitley was amazing. She was awesome. And like her whole crew was really cool, but some of the other people, like the elite people in that crowd, and they walked out on like $1,000 bills. And that's hard to do at the Ha Ha Cafe.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of chicken wings and
that's a lot of chicken wings. So it was not a good night. So then when I came back the next day, Jack and his wife, Terry, were laughing because they're like, oh, we were making bets that you weren't going to come back. You weren't going to come back.
You don't know me.
They're like, we can't believe you came back. And so, yeah, I only worked there 6 months, but working there, I got to know comedy, and I would see comedy every night, and it was so fun. And so I started hanging out with comics, and then I started dating one, which that was a disaster. But anyway, when him and I had broken up, I had done stand-up a few times when I was working there. And then when him and I started dating this comic, and then him and I broke up, and I missed comedy. And so I was like, well, I don't need him. And I also don't need the ha-ha. I just need comedy. So I started doing stand-up, and that's when I really started doing it like all the time.
And how did stand-up influence your acting and vice versa?
Oh my gosh. It was, I had an acting teacher actually who did stand-up, and he said anybody should do something that you're scared of. Like, even if that's not the field that you're going to go into, because it's going to make you better. It's going to make you a better actor if you go do it because you're terrified of it. And I was like, yeah, but I'm never going to do that. Like, I'm never going to. And then because he said that, and then I kept having that voice in my head, I'm like, oh God, I have to go do it. And then I did it. And then, I got bitten by the little comedy bug, because when you get that magic and you get the laughter and it works, there's nothing like it. That is the best feeling ever. It's so addictive.
Oh, I mean, it's crazy how many people don't stop comedy. Like, oh, I'm doing 40 plus years and I'm going to hit an open mic. It's like, for kind of outsiders, it's like, it really is sort of an addiction. I think that's like the best way of describing it. I mean, people, once they're in it, they're in it.
Yeah, it is. And it's also good because I think it builds up like such a good, like thick skin in you. And I think that's addictive. And the weirdest way, sometimes bombing, like even though no one wants to bomb,
right?
When you face that and you're like, I went through that, like it was awful, and I'm alive.
Right. Like no one wants to bomb, but imagine if you're doing comedy for, 10 plus years and you never have a good bombing story. Like, that's boring. So you sort of need it to develop that thick skin.
Yeah.
So how did your comedy change from like, the first few times you did it to as you became a more experienced comedian?
Oh, right. Yeah. And I never even answered your question.
It's fine.
Hello, ADD. Okay. So now I'm really confused. Okay. So how did comedy or acting affect one another?
Well, I think you addressed, you got into comedy because your acting coach said, try something you're afraid of. And then you did it and you got the bug and then you're very good at it. What I'm curious about is like everyone kind of has an arc when it comes to stand-up. I mean, I think initially we all, whether we like to admit or not, sort of emulate a character or maybe comedians that we admired, and then it takes a while to sort of develop your own voice. I'm curious, like what was kind of your comedic journey?
I mean, I think it always evolves with you, right? And that's the thing. It's like I haven't done stand-up in a long time now. The last time I did stand-up was before my daughter was born. Actually, yeah. Sorry, there's hold for ambulance, hold for fire truck.
Are there murders now happening around? Wherever Leah goes, murders follow. It's weird, but what a coincidence.
I know, we can't say, oh, you killed. What? I got to stay on track here.
So you
Hello.
you
Okay.
hadn't done stand up for a long time. It might have been around when your daughter was born.
Yeah, I haven't done it in a long time, but I don't know why I'm going down that rabbit hole. I went and did like an open mic, and it was like, ah, all that rush came back. Oh, the voice that you're talking about. It
Mhm.
was weird because when I picked up the mic, it was like it's almost like Jim Carrey's The Mask, it's like it had its own life, and it like he's on a different posture. I'm like, who is this? Like, I had this whole thing, and I remembered, I was like, oh my gosh, it is almost like this other alter ego, kind of like.
Mhm.
I think I found myself to be really masculine on stage, and that was very liberating for me, to just do that, because when I started stand up, it was very much like I was going through a heartbreak, and I felt very alone. And so it was very liberating to go to a dive bar all by myself and just be like, I can get up on stage and I have this magical superpower and I can be alone. And suddenly I'm not just a girl at the bar. I'm like a dude also. Or I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain it, but it was like I felt like I was okay, like I was safe. I was like strong somehow in that. So that kind of relationship was really cool and empowering, I felt like, but it was like a different kind of a persona, because I'm like, this is weird because I'm actually kind of shy. But when I
Mhm.
would get on stage, it was this other thing. But I think you evolve with it.
Yeah.
And I've been missing it more and more lately. The more I've been like seeing so many comics like who are rising and who have risen, right?
Mhm.
Like people who I would see in your room like all the time. And so that's super inspiring. And it's kind of giving me that like, that feeling again of like just wanting to be around it. I
Mhm.
don't know in what capacity, but that journey of like, where is that voice now? You know?
Yeah. Well, and one thing that's changed pretty significantly, in my opinion, from the early 2000s is like you really don't have to be in Boston, New York, LA, San Francisco to do stand up. In fact, like I cut my teeth in LA. I think you did too with stand up. It's probably the worst place to start. And like now you can be in Denver, Nashville is a huge scene. I mean, pretty much any city now has like some version of a club. But I want
Yeah.
to kind of dive in a little bit to your move back because I moved out of LA for a little while in 2012, and I think that was roughly around the time you moved back to Colorado. But I know a lot of stuff happened. Can you share with us what you're going through around, call it 2010?
Yeah. So yes, in 2010, I I was I felt like I was starting to really get leverage finally. That feeling where you're like, oh, things are starting to go
Mhm.
with stand up and with acting, and just things were just working. And then I found out I had melanoma, and I was like, it was, I was floored by it. And then I had to go in for surgeries and get, healing and all these different things. And so I couldn't make it to auditions. And it was scary because I found myself lying to my agent because, you never let anyone know you're sick. Well,
Right.
so I would be like, I can't, I'm just, I'm busy. And they're like, why are you not showing up? And then I was talking to one of my friends and mentors, John Reskin, who has a theater still in LA. And he was like, why don't you teach? And I was like, teach? Like, to me, that was like an insult. That's
You're
like,
like, I'm doing, damn it. I'm not teaching.
yeah, I was like, I am an actress. I am like almost famous. Okay. Do you know
I have
me?
credits.
Yeah. I was in a lip syncing contest. Okay. So I was just humbled. But then I was like, I do love it. Like, he was like, you love the craft. He's like, that's what I do, by the way. He's like,
Mhm.
hello. And he's like, you could do both. Who's to say that you can't do both? And I always did have like a director's eye. Like, I always loved directing, but I never really directed something, just in producing stand up, even like you're producing, you're directing things in a
Mhm.
way. You're not directing the stand up, but you know what I mean? And so I started really thinking about it. I was like, well, maybe I could do that. And at the time I sound like I've just been with all these different men, but I was with another guy, another suitor, gentleman caller. And we were going to get married actually. And he, we were we were never engaged, but it was like in the talks, it was in negotiations. Right. And, he was leaving the film industry as visual effects because he had just finished Life of Pi, and that was a huge movie. And he was like, this is a good exit point for my career. I don't really want to keep doing that. He had family in Denver. I had family in Denver. And he's like, why don't we move there and be close to family, you know? And I was like, healing. And I'm thinking, maybe I should, you know, I had given up so many things to be in LA for auditions, family trips, vacation, whatever, like, because, you know, you book a plane ticket, you're going to book a job. So I would just always miss things. And I just decided to move back home. I was like, okay, let's move. But then we moved back and I was like a stranger in my hometown, you know, because it's totally different. And I hadn't lived here in over a decade. And then I opened up a business, you know, and then I just opened up a business, an acting studio and theater. And I was just like, here I am, guys.
Yeah, what were the early days of that? Because it's very much a business. You know, I mean, you have to generate revenue, you have expenses. Yeah. Like, you know, talk us through that, please.
Please do talk us through. I'm like,
because I want to take notes so I can learn how to start something.
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, it's so crazy because I've been in business 11 years now, and one of my biggest missions now is to help and empower artists to make a living, because I mean that it's a beautiful thing when you can also make money at doing what you love, right? And not just from a standpoint of, I hope Paramount calls, you know, like I hope Universal gives me my big break, because let's be honest, like it's just as lucky as winning the lottery. It can happen. It happens to people all the time, but it's not the only way. You know, it's not the only way that you can be an artist and make a living is by waiting for somebody else to give you an opportunity. And so what opening a business was finally like taking all the things that I had been doing, you know, because I had produced some stand-up comedy shows too in Santa Monica. And so that knowledge of doing that, I ran events at a restaurant, because after the haha, I actually did go on to working fine dining and running big high profile events, you know, for big movies and big premieres and all sorts of events. So it's interesting how like those careers or those different kind of things turned into a career that helped me in my business. I would have never thought that all those skills kind of came together. And even my degrees. So it was like everything. Yay, I'm actually using. So sometimes like I would say when you're starting something, it's like sometimes you have all these pieces that you're like, I could do this or I could do that. And you're like, how does it make sense? But if you put it all out, you realize like you do have a business there. And what do you have to offer? And I knew I had this Meisner technique, which I don't know if you know it, but it's an 18-month course that I went through twice with two very well-known teachers, Bill Alderson and John Ruskin. And so I knew I had that, which was different, that I could teach and give people, because it had changed my life. It was so much bigger than acting. It was like about being a human and reading behavior and being present and all these things. And so I was like, you know, actually, I do want to give that back. And so I would say the biggest thing for me is coming into alignment with, what do I love? How can that be of service to other people? And how can it also empower myself and others? And if I can do all that, I have a business. I have something that I can do that is sustainable, that I can do over and over and over again and never get bored. So I didn't really know how. I just knew that piece. And then I would just research, like, okay, I mean, I had to like write a business plan, you know, all of that stuff, get a lease on a building. And now it's my business is different. It's morphed into, I'm more free because I'm not tied to a lease on a building. I'm online now, and I go into in-person in theaters. I do in-person events, but I'm not, in a specific place. So anyway,
You
there's
lowered your overhead. Yeah, you saw the
what?
benefits. You lowered your overhead costs. You saw the benefits to not being tied into a theater.
Oh my gosh. Well, yes, because before the pandemic, I was like the plumber, the lawnmower, and yeah, of course you hire people, but when you're running a business and those people don't show up, guess what? So like before the show, I'm like plumbing the thing, and it's a lot. I mean, it is, oh my gosh, it took me away from doing what I love. I was like, wait, I'm not the plumber and the this and that. I love directing. I love teaching. That's what I love to do. I don't love operating and maintaining a building.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to stick with what I love to do and what I'm good at and leave the rest and now I can go into buildings that are already being run and operated and I don't have to do it.
Yeah, you can say "see ya" when you're done. So I
Yeah.
like the name, the Namastage. Is that do you have a yoga background too? Is there you a practitioner or just like to
Yes.
ring to it?
Well, thank you so much for asking. Yes. So when I was healing from my cancer, I also went into yoga teacher training because I was just big on what has helped me in my life the most. And yoga was a big influence in making me feel better all the time. And so I went into yoga teacher training, but not really, again, thinking I would teach. And that's why it's sort of funny. Like I was really being led by spirit because I couldn't have planned all this. But I was just open, when you face your mortality that way, I was like, okay, just show me. What do I do? And when I went through yoga teacher training, my teacher, who was, like a yoga teacher to lots of celebrities and all these different people, and like he toured with like U2 and stuff and like all this stuff. But anyway, he was like, oh my gosh, you should involve yoga and acting and call it the Actasana Technique. So I did. So I have like the Actasana technique where I incorporate yoga into my acting curriculum and the Meisner technique. So just like a lot of conservatory theaters will have dance and singing and acting, I have, yoga, meditation and acting because you have to be centered and present and all the things to be on stage. So it's just a way to use all of those tools to help you on stage and on camera in life.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you bring up a good point about needing to be centered on stage. And it seems like everyone is a film critic, but you know the craft. You've worked in it for a long time. What do you think are characteristics that make someone a good actor? Like, what could you tell that someone like me without the experience might not be as attuned to?
Listening. I would say listening is the biggest thing. I can tell right away when an actor has already pre-decided everything versus the actor who is listening and working off of the other person in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
The second way is much more alive. And to answer your earlier question about comedy, the best comics do that. The best actors do that. The best comics are funny because they're in the moment, right? Like the best crowd work is done because they're just saying what's happening half the time. They're not even making stuff up. They're just reading the behavior of the audience. And people are like, that's hilarious because it's just the truth, right? So that's what I can tell when somebody's really a good actor, in my opinion, is one who's just so rooted in the moment and leaves all their plans. Of course they work on a part and there's parts of that, but ultimately they're just alive in the moment and listening and then responding truthfully, as opposed to this is my performance regardless of what you do.
Right. I think we've seen that with a lot of beginning actors where there's a pause after someone else talked and it's like, okay, now I will react. And then the better ones just kind of do it more seamlessly. And I took improv for years, and I think probably the best skill it taught, and I'm still learning it, but is what you said, is listening. People think, oh, it's about being quick on your feet or being funny. And maybe to a small extent, but it really is about reacting to just what happened. And it's so easy to think, oh, I got this line that's going to get them. But if it doesn't fit with what's just happened, it's going to look super lame. So
Yeah,
that's my brilliant analysis.
that's it. No, but that's really true. And it's really, I mean, what I love about the Meisner technique and what Mr. Meisner would always say is that it's so simple that intellects never get it. It's actually really simple. It's just like, just listen and respond truthfully. That's it.
That's why kids are such good natural actors, I think.
Oh, yeah, they're the best. They're the best.
Well, you have a cool story in that, like a lot of people, you moved to LA kind of with these dreams of stardom, but it sounds like you really hit your stride when you returned home. I guess what would, with that in mind, like what would you tell yourself from 20 years ago? Like what would you tell the Leah that was living in North Hollywood?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, cliches are a cliche for a reason, right? Because
Mhm.
it's tried and true, or it's been said a lot, or that's a common phrase. Because, but really, to really enjoy the journey, because I think back to so many of those nights, especially doing stand up with some of these people who are like hugely famous now, and
Mhm.
those were like the best nights of my life because it was fun, it was alive, everyone was just doing what they love. And sometimes I think you can get so focused on getting over there that
Mhm.
you forget that, like, no, this is it. We're doing it right now. Like, this is awesome. And it doesn't mean that you can't have goals to get over there, but like, this is great. Really, it's just being present. So, one thing that I've been really thinking a lot about lately is, more than money, more than anything, our biggest commodity is time. Like that's our biggest asset, right? And so if we really did value our presence more than anything else, we'd be living rich lives.
Mhm.
And I think so much of my younger years, I was trying to get someplace else, and I still do sometimes, because it's human nature. And I have to remind myself, like, with my daughter, like, don't miss right now. Like,
Only a child once. Yeah.
right?
Right. What have you done career-wise that you're most proud of?
I'm most proud of my business. I am most proud that I am living my purpose. And I know that it's my mission on the planet to help people, to empower people to share their gifts and talents.
Mhm.
And so it's incredibly rewarding to see people living their purpose, and being able to have an impact on that is so exciting to me. And I always tell my students and the people that I work with, I don't do it. Like, I'm not the person. I just, to be able to co-create with people in that way and help facilitate a process that gets people in alignment with their own power and their own truth, like, that is awesome. That's so rewarding. I can do it all day, every day. I mean, I just love it. I never get tired of it.
Very cool. Well, what are you most optimistic about?
I'm like, I believe the children are the future.
You can just play that song.
Like
Whitney's cool with it, yeah.
Houston. Yeah. I do though. I think I'm optimistic that comedians are saving the world. I feel like I really
Absolutely.
I really am. I feel sometimes I live in the twilight zone and like, is this happening? Is this really happening? But it's a very exciting time that like comedians are like the way showers and like the truth seekers. I would
The
never have,
shaman, yeah.
yeah, like we're in some kind of weird superhero movie and the comics are like the superhero. I'm actually optimistic about that because I think, if we can't laugh and we've been through so much, especially in the last few years, it's been so hard. And that's what's always given me optimism is music, art, paintings, like movies. And if we're not able to express freely, then we're in a dangerous spot. So it inspires me when people are brave to like just continue to express, like you with this podcast and people creating things. That inspires me. That inspires me about technology, that we could even connect and we haven't
Right.
talked so long. That is inspiring to me. I was excited to meet with you today. I'm like, that, how cool is that? So that's inspiring. I think that we can use technology and all this to our advantage, instead of letting it take over. And I think people are waking up to that. Like, okay, we're getting a little zombied out.
Right.
Use this for good and not evil,
Stop scrolling, lift your head up for a moment, please.
Yes. So I think that's a really good shift.
Well, I'm inspired. So for other people out there who are inspired, where can they learn more about you, your studio? How can we funnel people to you, Leah?
Well, thank you. Yes, funnel them in, throw them in the funnel. I always just imagine this big, it'll be fun. It'll be like a fun funnel. Okay. So I don't know. You can spin around. You can visit my website, Lea Marlene Actors Studio.com. And I have in-person events. I have online classes. I have retreats, shows. So just check us out and see what is in alignment for you, because either we can entertain you or I can help you if you have something where you need to entertain, or, leaders and entrepreneurs too can take acting class, because it's not just for actors. Absolutely. A lot of people have to get on stage for different reasons, right?
Whatever the reason, get on stage, hit up Leah. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to have you back. This has been a lot of fun.
This was so much fun. Thank you so much, Matt. I love it. I love your podcast, and keep doing it because you're doing great.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.